Hello, and welcome to our next Jolene's Book and Writers Talk podcast. Today, we visited the home of Dr. JoAnn Lordahl, a prominent author in the Gainesville area who is in her 90s. So we thought a visit would be better than trying to do Zoom. Dr. JoAnn Lordahl is a published author, former workshop leader, and speaker. She has held jobs as diverse as the Director of Psychological Services for students at Florida Atlantic University, to teaching applied psychology at Brock University in Canada. She even managed the Task Force Division for Statistical Tabulation Corporation in St. Louis, to teaching statistics at Florida A&M University. She has taught community education courses, diet workshops, poetry as therapy, money management for women, spirituality, and writing and journal keeping workshops. She has coordinated Women's Voices, a performance-based poetry group in Gainesville, Florida. Entranced by the peace and serenity of Hawaii when she was attending a writers' conference in Maui, she relocated there and immersed herself in the history of the island, resulting in two books, one called Princess Ruth. She lived in the islands for 10 years before returning back to Florida. In her lifetime, since the 70s, she has published over 20 books in both fiction and nonfiction. She has also written a play called Four Women Speak and a screenplay named Live Oak Plantation. She explains that she decided to become an author because she felt she could reach out to more people that way. She took her experience as a mother, successful businesswoman, teacher, and poet, and then translated that into the blueprints that others could learn from. Without further ado, please give a listen to
I'm
JoAnn
JoAnn
Lordahl.
Lordahl, and I write a lot of different kinds of things. My most recent is a poetry collection, and before that, I wrote a book about aging, which I'd been thinking about for a long time and finally got a chance to write. Age into Beauty, and it's reflections on aging and a kind of checklist so that you can think about where you are and what you're doing.
I understand your reviews for your Aging into Beauty is going very well. I've read some of it myself already. I don't know a lot about poetry. I know that there's different kinds. I studied it in high school, and the only kind that I really enjoy most of the time is probably limericks because they're quick.
Yes, and they're funny.
They're funny. And you have a book of poems that you collected over the years and published in a book. And how long did that take you?
40 years. That's from the start to the finish. But I started writing poetry very late. I was writing in my journal one day, and I reread a line or two that I had written, and I thought, that's poetry. That looks like poetry. And it was the end of a love affair, and I was, of course, writing a bunch of stuff and feeling bad and whatever. It was just the really right time for me to do that. And fortunately for me, when I started writing poetry, I didn't really know anything about it. I just started doing it. That's what I continued to do. One of the nicest things one of my friends told me is, she said, I don't like poetry, but I'm okay reading yours because you talk about something. It's not dense and you can't understand it. And I decided very early on that I was going to write so that people could understand it and so I could understand it, because I didn't know I just wasn't smart enough to do anything else. I've studied some poetry since then, and it's been helpful. I just love, for example, Mary Oliver. She just has such wonderful things to say, such deep thinking and getting at your emotions. It's very good.
In your studying, what are the various kinds of poems or types of poetry? Do you know officially How many there are?
I've heard, read somewhere, don't belong to any kind of formal sort of thing. Basically started out an avenue of expression. I wanted to talk about how it felt being at the beach, or, things just came up and happened, and I would try to express where I was or what was happening.
So how many books of poetry have you got published so far?
Well, all of my publishing has been doing it myself. I tried sending stuff out, and I realized that I could spend my life doing that, and I just wasn't interested. Fortunately, Amazon came along. I had an avenue to put it out, and I used to do readings. I used to do a lot of readings and go to poetry groups and stuff like that, which was fun. I really enjoyed that.
Does that help?
Well, it taught me a lot because I would read different poems, and we had a poetry group for a long time here in Gainesville. We published our stuff down at the Thomas Center, and we really had a good time doing that.
Poet Society or whatever in Jacksonville, I see them on Facebook, and they seem to be doing pretty good.
Yes, there's one in town.
Do you know what a chat book is?
Oh, that's what I started doing.
Okay.
That's how I published my first books. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Is that I would read my different poems and people would tell me, I really liked the first one you read, but now that third one didn't speak to me at all. And then another person would say, oh, the third one, I just really liked that one. But the first one, what was that about? And so I really began to understand that everybody had a different viewpoint. And my job was to try to write as many different viewpoints or as many different avenues as I could. But I wasn't interested in just doing one or just trying to please one person.
Yeah, you can't please everybody. You just do the best you can. You also write other fiction.
Right.
It's been a while since you published any of those.
Oh, you mean fiction? Fiction, right. Yes. I have a third one in mind on my Hawaiian series. I wrote the first one of Princess Ruth, who was a real person a long time ago who lived in Hawaii. Very special person. What I did when living in Hawaii, I did a lot of research and a lot of talking to different people, and it was quite informative. I learned a lot. And the beauty of the islands is simply incredible.
It is a beautiful place. Volcanoes get me, though.
Well, Princess Ruth had a lot to do with that. She stopped one of the volcanoes herself. She's a chiefess. She had a lot of power, and she stopped the flow of one of the lava that was going to destroy people. Wrote the second one about set in Hawaii, and I have a third one which would keep me interested. It takes me at least a year to write those, maybe two. And so I have to have a subject that interests me enough that'll keep me working for and learning for a year or two. So hopefully at some point I'll get a chance to do the third one, but on the other hand, maybe not. Who knows? The last two books that I wrote, I spent a lot of time worrying about, will I live long enough to finish these? And I finally decided that I was really very silly. I needed to put my energy into writing the book and not worrying about writing it. So whatever happened was going to happen. Me worrying about it was not going to help matters.
Are all your books in ebook format now?
I think they are.
I find that helpful.
Right. I don't read on ebook, but a lot of people do.
Yes.
I want a book in my hands that I mark a lot of times, even though I don't tell the library that necessarily, in pencil so that I can take notes. And I take notes from books.
On average, what would you say as an independent author, how much do you usually spend per book to try to get it published?
Oh, to get it published? Well, I've lucked out lately because I've found a really wonderful person who will take my copy and turn it into a book. And she just does a really great job. I try to get as many errors out as I can, and I try to fix it when I need to. I would say a conservative or a generous estimate would be something like $500. I just don't spend a lot because I don't need to. Imposing on friends and giving them a manuscript to read, so I get a lot of help that way too.
There's your beta readers right there.
Yeah.
Do you actually ever spend any money on ads?
Actually, I don't. Okay. I just simply do not.
And your readership, I've noticed from your website statistics, is kind of worldwide. It's getting an expanded reach. Do you think that's because you've lived all over the world?
Well, I've traveled a lot. I do try to be cognizant of the fact that we live in an expanding universe, and those fabulous pictures that are coming out now of the beginning of the universe, and it's just unbelievable. I've had several ambitions. One of them was to live to 2000, and another one, which is to live to have UFOs, to have contact with another civilization. I got my fingers crossed on that one. I mean, it may already be happening. How do we know?
Volunteer. Say, hey. Let me talk to them. See what they got to say. One of the questions that we usually ask the authors is, what would you consider to be your top 3 tips for somebody who's just starting out?
Set a schedule, set a schedule, set a schedule. I find that without a schedule, I simply don't function the way I need to. I can set a schedule for 1 hour a day working, but I need to keep that schedule. And the schedule is what allows the production, I feel. If you write when you feel like it, wonderful, but you're not going to get much done. For me, it's just torture not to have a focus. So part of the schedule is a focus on what you're doing, whether you know what it is yet or not.
That's good advice. Besides writing and researching, which I know you do a lot of researching, what other hobbies do you do that helps you relax?
Well, I try to walk every day when it's not melting outside. Yeah. And I can do it early enough or late enough. I still do it because the walking, just getting out in the fresh air and walking in the park and seeing the trees and the clouds, and it's very relaxing for me.
And of all the places that you visited over your lifetime, which one is your favorite?
Of places I've been, probably somewhere on Hawaii. I explored Kauai fairly well. They have a lot of magical place.
And did you ever learn how to surf?
I did some, yes. And I loved it, of course.
Well, do you do any kayaking or rafting now?
Not now. I used to. I've done some in Sarasota, wonderful spaces down there to do kayaking in.
What is your next book that you're planning?
I'm working on one now, and I don't really talk about what I'm working on because I don't want to dissipate it into language. And plus, I don't know what I'm doing. This one, I had a very clear idea of exactly what I was going to do. Then I started trying to do it, and I couldn't do it. I simply could not do it. A friend of mine, Catherine exactly, suggested just forget it, just leave it alone. And so I did, and I came across a book that it allowed me to find what I thought I was going to be doing. And now I can feel enthusiastic about it, which will have to last me for about a year. It'll take me to do it, but I'm very pleased. I mean, I really basically am quite pleased. And I've set a schedule, which I intend to keep. Miserable or not, I'm going to keep that schedule. It isn't miserable. It allows the production of work.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell our viewing audience or listeners about you or your books?
I think we've covered everything in sight, just about it.
I want to thank you, Miss JoAnn. Doctor?
Yeah. at some point.
Well, Dr. JoAnn, thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.